you can see from the title, today I'm going to film a books movie series video for the months of February and March. And I wanted to start a series where I talk about my favorite books, series and movies, which I watched in the last 3 months. But during January I had my exams, so I didn't really read any books or watch anything, really. So I have things to talk about from February and March. So I want to upload this every 3 months, and therefore my next one would be April, May, so in June. So I want to talk about items, books or films and series which I have not already talked about. So starting with books, these last 2 months I read quite a lot of books. As I said before, I was trying to read a book a week, but I didn't manage. However, I read 5 books these 2 months, which is a lot compared to nothing, which I was doing. So I'm going to talk about 2 books which I have not mentioned in my favorites videos. The first one is The Great Gatsby, and this is one of these books which is a classic and I've always wanted to read, but I haven't found the time to read. And I actually bought the book about 3 years ago, but I never read it, and I finally did. So it's The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald, and honestly the first part of the book, that the book was kind of dragging the story. I felt a bit bored at the beginning. Now I don't know, maybe I was just not in the mood to read. After I started reading, I got more into the story. The book is basically about Nick, whose house is located near Gatsby's house, and from his house he could see all the parties his neighbor had, and he found out that his cousin had gone out with Gatsby, and Gatsby wanted to meet his cousin, and then there's a lot of plot twists in the story, and the ending did not finish how I thought it would. I was very surprised when I arrived at the end of the book. Now I get why it is a classic, and if you haven't read the book, I suggest you do. I'm going to read the last line of the end of the book, just because I don't think I gave a good description of the story. A tragic love story played out in a world of dangerous illusion amidst the famous decadence of the Roaring Twenties. A classic, perhaps the supreme American novel, John Kerry of Sunday Times. The next book I'm going to talk about is The Dog Who Dared to Dream by, I'm going to enter the name here because I don't know how to pronounce the surname. I think it's Sun-Mi, but then the surname. This book isn't actually my own, and I borrowed this from my boyfriend because he had bought it and he hadn't read it, and I was in need of a book to read because I need to buy new books, basically. The book is about a litter of dogs where one of them is called Scraggly, and basically go through his life, where first he was separated from his family because his brothers and sisters were sold off, but he remained with his owner. And Scraggly is a girl, and she has children with this dog she meets, and you see her bonding with her children. And this book, it was a very easy book to read compared to The Great Gatsby. I got through this in like 3 days, which might be a lot for some people, but comparing to other books, 3 days was quite quick. It was a very original story just because the dogs were the main character, which I haven't seen a lot of animals being the main characters of books. So if you're looking for something which is different, I do suggest read the book. The next section I'm going to talk about are series, and finally I started watching Narcos, which is a series based in Medellin in Colombia during the time where there were lots of drug cartels. The story is based on Pablo Escobar and how he managed his drug cartel, first in Medellin and then in a prison. About half of it is in Spanish, so you do have to read the subtitles, which sometimes is a bit annoying because after a whole day of studying you wouldn't want to stay reading. However, the story is interesting enough for me to want to put in the effort. Also, I've been enjoying listening to people speak Spanish, and I'm falling in love with the language. And it's also something very different from what I usually watch, because usually I watch like drama or girly comedy films or series which are really light. However, Narcos is a more serious series for me to watch. The next series I want to talk about is Life Sentence, and this series started in the last month, I think, or maybe a month and a half. And the main character is Lucy Hale, which was one of the main characters of Pretty Little Liars. And honestly, I started to watch it because I used to watch Pretty Little Liars, and when I saw that Lucy Hale was starring as a main character in another series, I wanted to watch it. And in the beginning of the series, the story seemed a bit fluffy and unrealistic. The story is about a girl who lived her life believing that she was going to die with cancer. And for example, her family made her life the best it could be, and she married this guy after only meeting him because she believed that she was going to die, so everyone else treated her like she was going to die. However, she found out that she was cured, and therefore she wasn't going to die anymore. You see the struggle of her trying to adjust her mindset because now she knows that she has a longer lifespan, and you see that everyone else around her was living to make her happy. So when they found out that she wasn't going to die, her whole life changed. And as I said, the first 2 episodes weren't as good as I think they should have been. But now I continued watching the series, and I'm enjoying it much more than I did the first 3 episodes. So if you do start the series, I do suggest you watch a couple of episodes before you judge it. The next section I'm going to talk about films. I had to mention The Greatest Showman, but I'm not going to talk about it because I've talked enough about it in my videos. So I'm just going to put The Greatest Showman out there and how amazing it was. The next film I'm going to talk about is When We First Met, and it was a film I watched on Netflix. The main thing which drew me to this film was the cast, because there is Alexandra Daddario and Robbie Amell, Adam Devine and Shelley Henning, which was in Teen Wolf. I saw a number of actors and actresses which I knew and which their faces are familiar and I've seen act before, so I knew that the film would be a good film. The story is about a guy who met a girl, but he was put in the friend zone, and they fast forwarded to the wedding where she married another guy. She married the character of Robbie Amell. Basically, through time travel, he revisited their first date, trying to make himself end up with her rather than her husband ending up with her. The main concept of the film was time traveling. I think the film was categorized under comedy because it was a funny film to watch. However, I'm over the time travel concept because I've watched enough of them, honestly. But just because the characters were familiar, I enjoyed it more than if there was no characters which I knew. So I don't think I would have watched it if I didn't know any of the characters, because, as I said, I'm over the time traveling. If you haven't watched a lot of time travel films, I think it would be a good one to watch. And also I think it's a good film to watch if you want something which is light or maybe for a girls' night in. But I don't think it will be one of those films which I will be rewatching over and over. Last film I'm going to talk about is Game Night, and it was a film I watched in the cinema about a week ago. So in the film, a couple of friends meet for game night. However, one of the main character's brother comes into town and he tries to organize a game night in a different way. So he pays for this game where actors and actresses come into his house and they are basically they have to play a crime game. However, what happens is that he actually is kidnapped from people who weren't actors and actresses. His friends don't know that he's actually kidnapped, so the other people play the game thinking that it's just a game. However, he is actually kidnapped. And later on in the film, they realize that he was actually captured. So the story becomes more action at the later part of the film, and the beginning part is more a comedy. That's why I think it was under comedy, crime and action. The guy's neighbor is a creepy policeman who you think is not an important part, but then ends up being an important part in the film. I don't want to spoil the film. It was one of the best films I've watched in the cinema maybe in the last couple of months, besides The Greatest Showman, obviously. So that was my books, films and series video for February and March. I hope you enjoyed and thanks for watching. Bye!